Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hi, you're very welcome. This is Reading the Past and I'm Dr. Cat. And you may notice a little scabby on my lip. That's there because apparently, despite being a fully grown adult, I am incapable of exercising patience, particularly when there is cheese involved, because I did burn my lip on frankly magma hot levels of cheese, and I can't say that it won't happen again because it entirely might. Nevertheless, we're back with another look at the history news headlines to mark the first Friday of the month. This time we're going to be looking at the headlines that caught my eye in October 2022. As always, I will be using the description box to link the history news articles that we're going to be looking at today, in addition to any other relevant materials. We've got some updates, some new news, and some upcoming and recently opened events and exhibitions to look at today. There's also going to be a link to the October History News Pinboard that I've created over on Opera for you all to check out. But before we hop into today's topic, I want to say a big thank you to Orcam for sponsoring and collaborating with me on this video. I remain very grateful to Orcam for sending me my Orcam read last year. As a person with dyslexia, I find reading and also retaining information pretty challenging. But I do find that if I can hear the words that are on the page, that does really help. So I can point my Orcam read at whatever text I want it to read to me, whether that's on a page like this, on a laptop screen, a tablet, or indeed a phone. And then I can press this button so that the light pointer, or if you can see here, the light box appears. I select the text and then I let go. And at once, the text I've selected will be read to me. Now, you might think to yourself, well, I can't hear anything. And that's because I've popped my headphones into the headphone jack. Sometimes you are having something read to you, or you're in a place where you want to be the only one to be able to hear what the Orcam is reading. So it's perfect that you can use headphones. Another thing that I often want to do is make notes on the text that I'm having read to me. So it's really helpful that the Orcam lets you rewind and also fast forward the text. Let's take a moment to notice just how portable the Orcam read is too. I can put this in my handbag, my pocket, and I can even hang it around my neck using the lanyard. For iPhone and iPad users like myself, there is an Orcam app that I really recommend because it tells you how charged your device is. It helps you to locate it if you should happen to misplace it. It also lets you click directly away to useful tutorials that will help you to get the most out of your Orcam read. Additionally, through the app, you can manage settings on your Orcam read like reading rate and volume. If you choose to enable notifications, then the app will also alert you if you happen to walk away from your Orcam read, which I'm very much hoping will stop me from ever leaving mine behind. For more information on the Orcam read, please click on the link in my description box. Individuals in the UK with reading challenges may be eligible to get the Orcam read through the Access to Work programme or through the Disabled Students Allowance, which is for university students. Alternatively, the lovely people at Orcam have created a discount code for Reading the Past viewers, which will also be linked in my description box. Thank you again to Orcam for partnering with me on this video. So, with all that being said, now it's time to take a look at the history news headlines from October 2022. I want to try something different with this video. So the number of you very kind people who have taken the time to share multiple history news headlines with me from last month was really quite surprising. I am incredibly grateful. And I've decided that rather than thank each individual person before each separate story, because many of you shared more than one story, I think it's probably clearer, cleaner, and potentially quicker to offer my thanks to the group as a whole now. Individual credit for the respective story or stories will be given in both the description box and over on the Opera Pinboard. So, let's start off. I would like to thank all those who reached out to me across social media. Thank you to Yvonne, Cindy, Suzanne, Hilary, Maria, Patricia, Anne, Theodosius Snudpuckle III, Joe, Miss Gary, Twins Things, Lisa, Robert, Ewan, Jane, Melanie, and Perpetual Mourner. Just to make it abundantly clear, I am so incredibly grateful that each and every one of you, when you find something that you find interesting and think that I might find interesting too, the fact that you take the time out of your day to hop on and share it with me really does mean ever so much. And I just want you all to know that. And now, let's hop into the history news updates. At the start of last month, John Oliver presented a blisteringly incisive and funny exploration of the current situation with regard to museums, repatriation, and the ongoing trade in cultural treasures. He covered many of the collections that we have been discussing in these episodes, plus a few more. Hence my decision to whack this right at the start of the update section. Considering the number of times that this episode of Last Week Tonight was shared with me, I'm guessing that many of you have already watched it. Either way, I will be linking it in the description box and also over on Opera, and I would love to know what you all think of it. When it comes to this particular programme, I have no notes. John Oliver's stance on this issue is one that I frankly wholly align with, and in fact, as I was watching, my overriding and recurring thought was, yep, couldn't have said that better myself. There is also a commentary piece on the need for museums to be wary about their capacity to fuel the contemporary black market in illicit cultural objects, and I will be sharing that right now too, because it provides another, further, in-depth analysis of the current situation. In many ways, I think it's a brilliant companion piece to John Oliver's episode. It also reminds institutions of something that I would argue is frankly the foundation for them to do their jobs ethically, namely the need to fully investigate the provenance of the artefacts they are acquiring. And I'm not sure why this isn't standard practice. I mean, I am assuming that they're going to be all over the background check to make sure the piece they're acquiring isn't a fake. So at the same time, why isn't the legality of the trade they're taking part in also being assured? Because that does feel like the bare minimum to me. But of course, that's just where I stand on the matter. What about you? The rest of the updates remain, for the most part, repatriation focused. A lot is made of just how legal the process was when it came to bringing the Parthenon marbles into Britain in the first place. According to news that broke last month, however, there is a growing case that British laws around custom tax were flouted, at the very least. Esther Adley, writing for The Guardian, explains that Lord Elgin wanted to, quote, avoid paying the high rates of customs duty levied on sculptured marbles and curiosities, which would have amounted to tens of thousands of pounds in today's money. He achieved this by, on the one hand, downplaying the value of his hoard. Indeed, he would describe one consignment of 1803 as, quote, trifling antiques and marbles. But alternatively, perhaps additionally, it does also seem that Lord Elgin had the backing of the Foreign Secretary of the day when carrying out this particular fraud. Robert Stewart, Viscount Castlereagh, may have had his own agenda for helping Elgin short the taxman, though. It is suggested that he may have hoped to eventually acquire the sculptures for the nation, which is what happened in 1816, when Elgin's fairly well-known money troubles meant that he was forced to sell the pieces. Daniel Simpson, who is a postdoctoral research assistant at the University of Cambridge's Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology, and who is also the one who discovered the evidence of this particular bout of dodgy dealing, is quoted as saying, in my view, Castlereagh probably always intended the marbles to become part of the national collection, and used Elgin as a convenient way of separating government from the controversial practice of taking them from the Parthenon. If so, this would implicate the government more closely in the debate about the fate of the marbles today. The government was more responsible for taking them than has been assumed. I also think this is a useful reminder that even at the time of their arrival in Britain, the question of the acquisition and keeping of these marbles was contested, controversial, and potentially shrouded in deception. This is not some recent uproar. It is not a new conversation. However, perhaps there may be some movement in the direction of repatriation when it comes to the marbles, because last month it was also reported that a new group has been formed in the hope of successfully campaigning to return the Parthenon sculptures. The Parthenon project was founded by the Greek businessman John Leffas. The board includes 3 Conservative peers. There is the former Culture Minister Ed Vasey, the Lord Dobbs and Baroness Mayer. They are joined by Stephen Fry and journalist Sarah Baxter. The BBC reports that, quote, a poll of nearly 2,000 people commissioned by the Parthenon project suggests, while 16% of the British public think the Parthenon sculptures should stay in Britain, 54% think they should be returned. The report also stated that Liz Truss would fit in with the 16% because she was not in favour of their return. She was asked because she was Prime Minister at that time for that period. Apparently, we seem to change Prime Ministers like most other people change socks, and from what I can see, it doesn't appear that Rishi Sunak has been asked for his thoughts yet. 31 artefacts were repatriated to Nigeria from US museums last month. A sculpted head of a king or Oba was returned from the Rhode Island School of Design Museum. A further 29 pieces were the artefacts that we discussed in a previous video that the Smithsonian Institution's Board of Regents voted to return in June, and the final piece of that 31 was returned from Washington's National Gallery of Art. The Smithsonian worked in conjunction with the National Gallery of Art to host the ceremony that formalised this repatriation on the 11th of October 2022. Lai Mohammed, Minister of Information and Culture for Nigeria, attended the ceremony and stated that, quote, Nigeria is immensely gratified at the commendable decision of the Smithsonian's National Museum of African Art, the National Gallery of Art, and the Rhode Island School of Design to return these artefacts that left Africa over a century ago. Nigeria looks forward to working with these institutions on joint exhibitions and other educational exchanges. By returning the artefacts, these institutions are together writing new pages in history. Their brave decision to return the timeless artworks is worth emulating. We will, of course, keep watching with interest to see just how far this inspiration to emulate will actually reach. The Associated Press reported on the, quote, industrial-scale destruction to Ukrainian culture and heritage at the hands of Russian troops. The destruction has been referred to as a war crime. It is being alleged that the invasion, quote, is being accompanied by the destruction and pillaging of historical sites and treasures on an industrial scale. A hoard of artefacts is said to have been removed from the museums of captured cities, and the whereabouts of these items is now unknown. The missing pieces include this golden tiara. It is inlaid with precious stones and is around 1,500 years old, which connects it to the rule of Attila the Hun. Additionally, UNESCO believes that 199 cultural sites in 12 regions have sustained damage. This includes 84 churches and other religious sites, 37 buildings of historic importance, 37 buildings for cultural activities, 18 monuments, 13 museums, and 10 libraries. The calls for the return of the Rosetta Stone reached a new level last month. Beginning in September, a group of archaeologists are petitioning the Egyptian Prime Minister, Mustafa Madbouli, to submit an official request for the return of the Rosetta Stone, and that's in addition to 16 other artefacts that are also deemed to have been removed from the country by illegal or unethical means. The petition document has already been signed more than 2,500 times. Monica Hanna, an archaeologist who co-founded the restitution campaign, told CBS News that the Rosetta Stone and the other objects are definitely going to be repatriated. Quote, "It's just a matter of when." The British Museum, where the Rosetta Stone is currently being housed, explained, via a spokesperson, that there has never been a formal request from the Egyptian government for the return of the Rosetta Stone. I think the word missing from that particular explanation is yet. There hasn't been a formal request yet. And as further updates almost certainly appear, I will be sure to pass them on. In the last History News Review video, we learned about the efforts of that Cambodian team that had visited the British Museum and the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. While they were over here, they examined more than 100 Cambodian antiquities, some of which the delegation believed to have been stolen. They also visited the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford and the Fitzwilliam Museum in Cambridge with the same purpose in mind. Apparently, quote, "The Victoria and Albert Museum provided full, unfettered access to its Cambodian collection and relevant personnel and materials. The British Museum was difficult to deal with and provided only minimal or redacted documents," said the team. However, at the Ashmolean, provenance records handed to the team turned out to be empty envelopes with a few photographs, and the museum cited confidentiality reasons. The team will now review and discuss their findings before potentially submitting formal requests for repatriation. The team also intends to explore collections that are held by Singapore, Japan, Korea, and Taiwan in the future. So perhaps we will be seeing a wave of returns in this direction soon. That stash of 260 gold coins that was found beneath the kitchen floor in East Yorkshire, the one we discussed in last month's video, that has successfully sold at auction. It was originally provisionally thought that the coins would sell through Spink & Son for between £200,000 and £250,000, still a fairly high fee. However, that estimate was tripled once the story gained global attention. The coins were eventually sold to dozens of buyers in individual lots. Altogether, the collection reached a hammer price of £628,000 for all the lots together, with the final purchase price, including various fees, calculated at £754,000. The buyers are, for now at least, all unknown. Those are the updates. Now it's time to look at the new news. A manuscript that was looted from a Greek monastery by the Bulgarian army during World War I has been returned. Reportedly, the 1,000-year-old document represents one of the oldest handwritten Gospels in the world, and it, quote, was written in a Greek monastery in southern Italy during the late 10th to early 11th centuries. But sometime between the 14th and 15th centuries, it moved to the Kozhenitsa monastery, also known as the Theotokos Ikosophanissa monastery in northern Greece. It was housed in the Museum of the Bible in Washington, following its donation to that institution. Last month, it was, however, returned in a formal ceremony to the Kozhenitsa monastery. Other manuscripts were looted alongside this one, and the monastery hopes that the example that's been set by the Museum of the Bible in this instance will encourage other institutions that are holding similarly looted manuscripts to follow suit. The remnants of a statue, which is said to be at least 1,800 years old, and that once depicted the mythical figure Hercules, has been uncovered during an archaeological dig on the site of the ancient metropolis of Philippi in northeastern Greece. Although he was not involved in this dig, Archie Dunn, who is a teaching fellow in Byzantine archaeology at the University of Birmingham in the United Kingdom, described the find as extraordinarily interesting. Going further, he pointed out that buildings from the 8th and 9th centuries, such as those that would have been contemporary with the remains of this statue, were rarely decorated with statues, and especially not with statues of things with pagan origins. Dunn is struck by the fact that, quote, there was a statue of a demigod, as Hercules is, in the middle of the city, at the junction of two major streets, so it cannot be an accident. More excavations on this site are set to continue next year. The National Gallery of Art in Washington has announced that following an investigation by an interdisciplinary team of curators, conservators and scientists, it can be concluded that The Girl with a Flute is not, as was once suggested, a work by Vermeer. The attribution has been questioned by scholars for many years because this painting has been viewed as being of lower quality than his other known works. It is now thought to be the work of an individual who was, quote, perhaps a student, an apprentice in training, or an amateur taking lessons from the master, who, in senior imaging scientist John Delaney's words, understands the technique but has very limited skill in executing it. The process of assessing this work, which was done by closely comparing it to other Vermeers, is also said to have generated an, quote, exponential increase in our understanding of Vermeer's working process. So it seems then the reward for losing a Vermeer in this way was the chance to understand the true works more fully. Guess how I found out that US craft store Hobby Lobby was in possession of the ancient artefact that is known as the Gilgamesh Dream Tablet? If your answer is, I saw this article, then you'd be spot on. According to this report, Hobby Lobby purchased the tablet, which is inscribed with a portion of Gilgamesh, an epic poem that is thought to be one of the world's oldest works of literature, at an auction in 2014. This article is also how I found out that the president of Hobby Lobby is also the chairman of the Museum of the Bible, and they're the ones who were the returners of that manuscript to the Greek monastery from earlier in this video. Both Hobby Lobby and the Museum of the Bible reportedly asked the auction house about this tablet's origin, but the auction house withheld that information and lied in saying that the antiques dealer had confirmed the details of provenance. This is according to the Justice Department, which has now sought to return the artefact to Iraq. Law enforcement agents seized the tablets from the museum in 2019. Recently, a New York federal court has ordered that the item be returned. The tablet and manuscript do not represent the first time that Hobby Lobby has found itself in possession of questionably acquired artefacts. Indeed, CNN explains that, quote, Hobby Lobby previously agreed to forfeit thousands of artefacts from Iraq and pay a $3 million fine in 2017 to resolve a civil action the Justice Department brought against it. In 2018, those 3,800 ancient artefacts, including cuneiform tablets, were returned to Iraq after they had been falsely labelled as tile samples and illegally smuggled to Hobby Lobby, according to US Immigration and Customs Enforcement and the Justice Department. I guess we'll find out soon enough whether that's going to be the end of these discoveries and repatriations from Hobby Lobby or not. Experts are warning that more than 100,000 protected archaeological sites in Hungary have been systematically looted since the 1980s by so-called treasure hunters armed with metal detectors. Istvan Vida, head of the coin department of the Hungarian National Museum, explained that, quote, artefacts have disappeared from the top layer of the earth. Larger objects and coins were stolen first. Metal detectors are now more and more sophisticated. They can see deeper and deeper into the ground. The disappearance of artefacts has accelerated. and there is not much left in the fields 40 or 50 centimetres deep. They are practically empty. While Gabor Viragos, Deputy Director General of Hungary's National Archaeological Institute, stated that, quote, "If it continues like this, in 10 to 15 years, the top 20 to 30 centimetres of the soil will be vacuumed up in Hungary. New finds will only appear if they plough down to a depth of 80 centimetres. The damage is incalculable." There are laws against this, but clearly they must be being ignored, and potentially it's already much too late for far too much of this archaeology. It was announced that the Founders Museum in Barre, Massachusetts, will be returning 150 sacred objects to the Oglala Sioux tribe on the 5th of November 2022. So that's the day after this video is going to be going live. Some of the items are believed to be from the Wounded Knee massacre, and the collection includes clothing, personal objects, pipes, moccasins and weapons. Further to this, it is being reported that, quote, "The items being returned are among an estimated 870,000 Native American artefacts, including nearly 110,000 human remains, in the possession of the nation's most prestigious colleges, museums, and even the federal government, that under federal law are supposed to be returned to the tribes. We will keep an eye out for news regarding the future of these other artefacts and any potential repatriations that may occur." Archaeologists working in Rastan, which is a town in central Syria near to Homs, which itself was a key battleground during the Syrian Revolution, have uncovered this. It dates to the Roman era, specifically to the 4th century CE, and it features events from the Trojan War. It shows the demigod Hercules slaying Hippolyta and also depicts the god Neptune alongside 40 of his mistresses. Experts hope that they will be able to identify the building that this once adorned as their excavations continue. Last month, there were lots of reports about King Charles III's apparent support for there to be a DNA investigation of the remains that are believed to belong to the Prince in the Tower, and which certainly have been labelled as such in their burial currently. And I'm almost nervous to talk about this because I'm aware of how emotive a topic it is for so many people and how interested people are in this particular mystery. But I do have qualms, or maybe questions. Principally, I am wondering what any such investigation, what we might expect to learn from it. I mean, yes, so let's say we do open it up and we do DNA test them. Firstly, extracting DNA from old, dry remains is, to my understanding, frequently much easier said than done. But let's say it's possible. There is sufficient DNA and it can be used to prove that the remains that have been buried as Edward V and his brother Richard are indeed them. All right, so then what? Do we have technology that can determine when these boys died with enough accuracy to make it actually useful for solving this mystery? Will we be able to get a cause of death? And if we don't, how useful is it? But what if they're not the bones of the boys? Does that prove categorically that their uncle let them live? And if they're not the boys, they're someone else's children, maybe. But now they're unknown and unnamed. What happens to them? Do they return to their current resting place with the name now removed? Do they go back to their original resting place and get put back in the tower? I don't mean to be a killjoy, but I don't think I see enormous value coming from this endeavour. But nevertheless, I of course welcome discussion on the matter. LiDAR technology, or light detection and ranging, made the news on at least 2 occasions last month. This technology is revolutionising things in the world of archaeology because it offers experts a chance to explore and research an area in a non-invasive way. Last month, LiDAR reportedly found 800 ancient monuments in a Polish forest, and also mapped the extent of the Mayan city of Calakmul from beneath the jungle canopy. To obtain a fuller understanding of these sites that have been imaged in this way, other research methods, including drilling, were, and indeed will, be required. But LiDAR can be used to compile a 3D digital map of the landscape, removing obscuring features such as tree canopies that could hide archaeological features. I am in little doubt that at some point, LiDAR is going to become as tied to the practice of archaeology in the public consciousness as the concept of the test pit is already. A discovery has been made at Kaifeng, which is about 525 miles northwest of Shanghai, China. There, 6 ancient cities appear to have been stacked on top of each other. They had, apparently by turns, been covered by mud and sand when the nearby Yellow River flooded. The Miami Herald reports that, quote, bridges, waterways, temples, houses, roads, walls and shipwrecks, dating back to 780 CE, re-emerged with the archaeologists' excavations. The layered cities held more than 60,000 artefacts, but one set of artefacts dominated all the rest: a pair of stone murals. Each one has been measured at 10 feet tall and almost 100 feet long, so far, because there is still more to excavate, and it's thought that these murals may be as much as 330 feet long. These stone murals date back to the Song dynasty, from 960 to 1276, and they are the largest of their kind ever to be found in China. Seahorses, cranes, clouds, and other symbolic imagery has been found on them so far. I look forward to the excavations being finished, and hopefully at that point we will get a full view of this incredible find. The oldest known animation in the world hit the news last month. It is 5,200 years old and can be found on a vase or goblet that was made in Iran. It was originally excavated from Sa-i-Sukta, Iran's famous, quote, burnt city. The related series of images on this item shows a goat jumping up to eat the leaves on a tree. This piece can be viewed at the National Museum of Iran. A set of human remains, discovered in Somerset in 1903 and known as Cheddar Man, belongs to a hunter-gatherer who died 9,000 years ago. His is the oldest complete skeleton ever to be found in Britain. However, that is not the only record on the table for Cheddar Man, because he is now one half of the world's most distant confirmed relative pair. Adrian Targett, a 42-year-old history teacher from Cheddar in Somerset, has been shown, by DNA tests, to be a direct descendant through his mother's line of Cheddar Man. That is said to represent a familial link that stretches back over 300 generations, which is pretty incredible. An exploration of a medieval parchment that once belonged to a monastery in Egypt has reportedly resulted in the discovery of part of the long-lost star catalogue of the astronomer Hipparchus, which is believed to be the earliest known attempt to map the entire sky. Much of this manuscript is currently being held by the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. Yes, them again. But it originated from the Greek Orthodox St. Catherine's Monastery in the Sinai Peninsula, Egypt. Nature.com reports that, quote, the pages contain the Codex Climacti Rescriptus, a collection of Syriac texts written in the 10th or 11th centuries. But the codex is a palimpsest, parchment, that was scraped clean of older texts by the scribe so that it could be reused. Multiple photographs of this manuscript's pages were taken, in various wavelengths of light, which were then explored using various computer algorithms designed to search for combinations of frequencies that could then be used to enhance the hidden text. Hipparchus, author of this star chart, was working around 300 years before the astronomer Claudius Ptolemy set out his model of the cosmos. Hipparchus worked roughly between 190 and 120 BCE. In addition to this discovery, we now have a methodology that can presumably be applied to other manuscripts in the future, and so hopefully more hidden texts are about to be uncovered. A 7-year study of burial grounds in London and Denmark, which contain plague victims, those who died before the Black Death, and those who died between 10 and 100 years after the plague struck, has thrown up some interesting implications for contemporary people. It seems that individuals with a specific genetic variant, namely the ERAP2 variant, may have been protected from the plague. However, today, according to CNN, that same variant has been linked to, quote, a greater susceptibility to autoimmune disorders such as Crohn's disease, where the immune system becomes overactive. This suggests that populations that survived the Black Death paid a price, which is to have an immune system that increases our susceptibility to react against ourselves. As a person with psoriasis, it's oddly comforting to be able to cling to this sense of purpose, to find a reason as to why my body occasionally attempts to rebel. I'm not sure how comforted I'll be by this when my next skin flare-up appears, but, at least I'm comforted for now. This next story is both utterly thrilling and terribly awkward. A famed French auction house, Ozonat, was responsible for the sale of this Chinese vase. Their in-house expert valued this piece at €2,000, which is around £1,745. Much to their surprise, seemingly, it soon became the focus of a bidding war, with buyers being convinced that this was in fact a rare 18th century artefact. It ultimately sold for nearly €8 million. And now for the awkward bit. This mistake, which I think we can all see is quite the humdinger, lost the expert in question his job. The auction house's owner, Jean-Pierre Ozonat, said, quote, the expert made a mistake. One person alone against 300 interested Chinese buyers cannot be right. He was working for us. He no longer works for us. It was, after all, a serious mistake. This whole thing fills me with vicarious dread when I think about that job interview moment when this expert is going to be asked to explain why he left his last job. Our last piece of new news is the, frankly, incomprehensible story of the man who toppled 2 ancient Roman busts in the Vatican Museum. We are told he caused moderate damage to them before being arrested. CNN is reporting that the man responsible was an American tourist who apparently became frustrated when his demands to see the Pope were denied. And I have no comment to make on that behaviour, because I don't even know how to say what I want to say without being demonetised. So let's just leave it at I'm not impressed. Conservators do appear to be hopeful that they are going to be able to reverse the damage that this individual caused. As is the custom, after the new news, it's time for us to check out some events and exhibitions. As always, I want to know if you have been or have planned to go to any or indeed all of these exhibitions or events. I also want to know your thoughts on them if you do go. So do let us all know what you think in the comments section. The Virginia Museum of Fine Art is hosting Storied Strings, the guitar in American art. This will be open until the 19th of March 2023. We are told that this exhibition sets out to explore the guitar as visual subject, enduring symbol, and storyteller's companion. Visitors to this exhibition will experience paintings, sculpture, works on paper, and music in a multimedia presentation that unpacks the guitar's cultural significance, illuminating matters of class, gender, race, ethnicity, and identity. I have talked about this one before, but it's definitely worth a reminder, I think. The Tudors, Art and Majesty in Renaissance England, opened last month, and it's going to be on display at the Met Fifth Avenue until the 8th of January 2023. Now, I have been seeing some of the photos that have been taken by visitors to this exhibition popping up on social media, and suffice to say, it looks incredible, and I am very jealous that I almost certainly won't get to see it. Nevertheless, I hope that anyone who can will, and that you will enjoy it for me too. The main building of the National Library of France has reopened after a 12-year period of renovation, which cost the country more than €250 million. The library is said to have begun with the personal collection of King Charles V in 1368, and it would become at least a proto-form of what we now know as a copyright library in 1537. And I say this because during the reign of King Francis I, printers and booksellers were required to provide the king with copies of any books that were for sale on the public market, which, to my mind, is the definition of the modern copyright library. However, it would be centuries before any of these works could be accessed by the public, and certainly by the general public. However, the collection is, I'm sure we can imagine, enviable. The Museum of London Docklands will be exploring the story of London's public executions and how they shape the city itself. The exhibition website offers the following description, quote, "Public executions were a major part of Londoners' lives for centuries. From Smithfield to Southwark, from Banqueting House to Newgate Prison, executions became embedded in London's landscape from the 12th century right through to the 19th. Even today, hints of this uncomfortable past can still be seen across the capital. The Museum of London Docklands has brought the rarely told and often tragic human stories behind these events to a new exhibition. Executions showcases a range of fascinating objects, paintings and projections, including the vest said to have been worn by King Charles I when he was executed, a recreation of the Tyburn Gallows with an immersive projection, last letters of the condemned, and much more. Many of the items on display have rarely been seen in public. This is your chance to discover how, over nearly 700 years, public executions came to shape the city we know today. Executions is set to run until the 16th of April 2023. Meanwhile, the other site belonging to the Museum of London, over on London Wall, is preparing to close to the public for good. The collection from there will be moving to a new site in West Smithfield in 2025, with their new space set to open in 2026. But before this closure takes place, there are lots of events, including 2 free weekend festivals that are set to take place on the 26th and 27th of November and on the 3rd and 4th of December. There are also separate late night events and walks that are taking place. There seems to be lots to choose from, and all of it looks like it's going to be a really great way to say goodbye to the old site. The Haggerty Museum of Art in Milwaukee is hosting J.R.R. Tolkien, The Art of the Manuscript, until the 23rd of December 2022. We are told that this exhibition considers Tolkien's work through the lens of manuscripts, in terms of both the materials that Tolkien studied as a medieval philologist and the manuscripts that he created while developing his collected writings on Middle-earth. Professor Tolkien was deeply immersed in the complexities of manuscripts, and this exhibition will illustrate how different aspects of the manuscript tradition found expression within Tolkien's scholarly life and in his creative writing. Founded on Marquette's J.R.R. Tolkien collection, The exhibition also includes items borrowed from other repositories, including a significant number of Tolkien manuscripts and artwork from the Bodleian libraries at the University of Oxford. Many of the 147 items in the exhibition have not previously been exhibited or published. A number of public programmes are being hosted alongside this exhibition as well. For example, on November the 5th, you can go and learn to play Dungeons and Dragons in a Tolkien-inspired world. While on November the 17th, there's going to be a lecture that's entitled, quote, "Whispering Leaves, How Tolkien's Manuscripts Reveal the Secrets of His Creativity," both of which sound pretty fun to me. But what do you think of any or all of the headlines that we've looked at today? Were there any headlines that caught your eye in October that I didn't discuss in this video? What about any exhibitions or events that you may have spotted? As always, I'm looking forward to reading your conversations in the comments section underneath this video, or you can come and find me elsewhere on social media. I will leave links to all the other places you can find me on the internet in my description box, so do consider following me over on some or all of those so that we can continue this conversation and start some others. I do hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, please share it with some friends. Please also let me know you liked it by hitting the thumbs up. Please do subscribe to the channel, and if you think you're subscribed, now is the ideal time just to have a little check. Make sure that YouTube hasn't mysteriously unsubscribed you against your will, and while you are there, checking, subscribing, maybe resubscribing, you will notice there's a little bell icon and it sits beside the subscribe button. So if you hit that and then select all in the drop down menu that will appear, YouTube is supposed to tell you when I next upload. I do hope that you're going to have a great day, whatever you're doing, and I look forward to speaking to you all in my next video. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye for now.